Let's jump right into one of philosophy's absolutely most famous and honestly most mind bending thought experiments. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're handed a choice. And this isn't just any choice, it's one so profound it'll challenge literally everything you think you know about happiness, authenticity, and, well, what actually makes a life worth living. Today, we're diving into an explainer on Robert Nozick's experience machine. We're putting you right at the dead center of this dilemma to see exactly what you would do.
Okay, so here's the scenario. Picture this futuristic tank. Inside this tank, some incredibly brilliant, super-duper neuropsychologists have figured out a way to perfectly stimulate your brain. I mean, they can simulate any experience you could ever possibly desire. You could be, I don't know, writing a world-changing novel, meeting your ultimate lifelong best friend, or reading the greatest book ever written. But all the while, your actual physical body, it's just floating in this tank with electrodes hooked up to your head. You get to pre-program a lifetime of absolutely perfect, flawless, simulated experiences. So, the ultimate question for you is, would you plug in? This wild concept comes straight from philosopher Robert Nozick, way back in his 1974 book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia. And he laid out some very specific rules here to make the thought experiment completely airtight. Crucially, he says that once you plug into this machine, you wouldn't even remember making the choice to do it. Your memory of getting into the tank? Totally wiped. You would firmly, 100% believe that the simulation is your actual waking reality. Plus, he notes the machine is run by friendly, totally trustworthy beings, so you don't have to stress about glitches or malevolent agendas. It's just pure, unadulterated bliss, exactly how you programmed it for the rest of your life. Now, Nozick designed this machine as the ultimate stress test for an ethical theory called hedonism. Basically, hedonism argues that experiencing pleasure or happiness is the absolute highest and, frankly, the only intrinsic good in human life. So if feeling good from the inside is literally the only thing that matters, then plugging into a machine that guarantees maximum pleasure and zero pain, well, that should be an absolute no-brainer, right? Everyone should be lining up to plug in. But Nozick used this thought experiment to challenge that exact idea. He had a sneaking suspicion that mere happiness just isn't the whole story. See, Nozick intuitively believed that most of us would actually refuse to plug in. And decades later, the empirical data totally backed him up. Look at a 2016 study by researchers Frank Hendricks and Igor Duvin. They actually surveyed people on this exact hypothetical scenario. And the results are pretty striking. A whopping 70% of people rejected the experience machine. I mean, think about that for a second. Even when you are promised guaranteed pleasure, the fulfillment of literally all your wildest dreams, and zero pain, 7 out of 10 of us still intuitively choose our messy, unpredictable, and sometimes really painful reality over a perfect simulation. But why? If happiness isn't the end-all be-all, what on earth are we valuing so much? Well, Nozick broke our hesitation down into 3 core arguments. First up, he says we have this deep, innate desire to actively do things, not just have the passive experience of doing them. We actually want to accomplish stuff. We want to write the novel, build the business, or climb the mountain. We don't just want the passive illusion of having done it downloaded into our brains. It's that massive difference between true, hard-earned achievement and just having the feeling of achievement artificially spoon-fed to you. And that brings us to his second point, which honestly I find incredibly powerful. Nozick argued that we want to be a certain way. We want to be a specific sort of person with a real, defined character. As he so starkly put it, someone floating in a tank is an indeterminate blob. Plugging into the machine is a kind of suicide. Wow. Because inside that simulation, you aren't actually courageous. You aren't kind or smart or loving. You aren't really anything at all. By ditching the real world for a tank, you're essentially erasing your true personality. You're trading in your actual identity for a simulated feeling. Now, Nozick's third argument centers on reality itself. He said we inherently value an authentic connection to a deeper reality. We want our lives, our achievements, our relationships to be anchored in actual facts, not just some man-made delusion. We don't just want the pleasant illusion of being connected to the world, we demand a real connection. We want to know for sure that when we love someone or when they love us back, it's actually true in a world that exists outside of a programmed hard drive. Okay, but let's hit pause for a second and flip our perspective. Are we really rejecting the machine because of these deep, super noble philosophical values about authenticity? Or is it possible we're just being manipulated by our own psychological biases? Like, are we just inherently terrified of the unknown?
A lot of modern philosophers and psychologists have scrutinized Nozick's thought experiment and suggested that maybe, just maybe, our knee-jerk reaction to reject the machine isn't quite as pure as he assumed. Let's consider something psychologists call the status quo bias. Try reversing the thought experiment. Imagine someone totally credible walks up to you and says, "You are already living inside an experience machine right now. You actually have no idea what the real world is like. But you're given a choice, have your memory wiped and wake up in actual reality." Studies show most people would choose to stay right where they are, inside the machine. This strongly hints that maybe we don't value reality nearly as much as we value familiarity. We just prefer the life we know, the status quo, over taking a huge, radical leap into the unknown, regardless of whether that unknown is a machine or reality itself. And then there's what we could call the hedonistic bias. Philosopher Matthew Silverstein has this really fascinating defense of hedonism against Nozick's machine. He argues that our intense drive to stay rooted in the real world is actually just an indirect, roundabout way of pursuing long-term happiness. We might subconsciously suspect that a machine is only going to give us cheap, short-term gratification. So we reject it basically because we think staying in reality gives us a far better shot at securing deep, long-term psychological comfort and peace of mind. So, ironically enough, turning down the machine might just prove that we are ultimately driven by a desire to feel good. So, to really put these motivations to the test, researchers gave people a totally different choice. Instead of a whole tank, what about two types of pills? One is an experience pill. It just simulates positive feelings while you go about your life in the real world. Only 53% of people said they'd take that one. But the second option is a functioning pill, a pill that actually enhances your real-world capabilities and skills without messing with your perception of reality. A massive 89% of people opted in for the functioning pill.
So what does this tell us? It reveals that, sure, we absolutely desire pleasure. I mean, over half the people would pop a pill just to feel good. But we possess a much, much stronger intrinsic drive to actually function better out here in the real world. We crave real capabilities, not just illusions. We want to genuinely achieve things. And that firmly supports Nozick's original gut feeling. We value real, tangible action way more than just simulated positive vibes.
But here's the thing. Nozick's sci-fi tank, it really isn't just a hypothetical thought experiment anymore. In so many profound ways, the machine is already here. It maps almost flawlessly onto our current digital reality. Just think about the highly curated social media algorithms that spoon-feed us exactly what we want to see, or the incredibly immersive worlds of the metaverse and modern video games, or honestly, just the sheer number of endless hours of screen time we log every single day. We are constantly, day in and day out, making these tiny choices to plug into digital simulations that offer us perfectly tailored pleasure and convenience, all to avoid the friction of the real world. The lines are already blurring so fast. Just consider this actual real-world post from someone using a modern AI companion app. Is it wrong or bad to fall in love with an AI? People right now are forming intense, totally genuine emotional attachments to chatbots. They're feeling real love, deep comfort, and friendship with an entity they logically know is just code. It is essentially the experience machine right in our pockets, handing out virtual pleasure that competes directly with the messy, often incredibly difficult pursuit of authentic human connection.
As philosopher Dan Wagers points out, our entire collective relationship with reality is shifting. As virtual tech becomes this constant, super familiar staple in our everyday lives, our strict demand for non-virtual reality is starting to fade away. We're getting extremely comfortable with virtual interactions, and as that familiarity skyrockets, the psychological barrier to plugging in, to actually choosing the simulation over reality is dropping fast. We might literally be witnessing a slow, societal loss of the need for things to be strictly real.
You know, talking about all this inevitably brings to mind the year 1999 when the groundbreaking movie The Matrix hit theaters. That film just brilliantly explored this exact philosophical dilemma on a massive scale. Remember the character Cypher? He's sitting in that simulated restaurant, completely aware that the juicy steak he's chewing on isn't real. But he is just so exhausted by the brutal, miserable reality outside the Matrix. So he makes a conscious choice to betray his friends just to be plugged back in, famously saying, "Ignorance is bliss." It's a pretty stark reminder that sometimes the warm comfort of a simulation can heavily outweigh the harsh struggle of reality. So ultimately, where does that leave us? We're left grappling with this immense tension, feeling good versus being meaningful. Nozick's thought experiment forces us to compare a potentially superficial life, one that's just packed with guaranteed artificially rosy moments, against a highly textured, complex life of authentic achievements, a life that by definition includes pain, failure, and struggle. Do we simply want a life that feels happy from the inside? Or do we demand a life that actually is meaningful? Which brings us right to our final, somewhat provocative question. Is living a meaningful life actually more important than simply feeling happy? As we navigate this increasingly blurred digital world where simulations are offering us more convincing and easily accessible pleasures every single day, this isn't just some abstract philosophical puzzle anymore. It is a daily, highly practical choice we all have to make. So, what is your personal definition of a good life? I'm going to leave you to ponder that one. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer on the Experience Machine.